Now, something interesting I've discovered recently is this real close relationship between these very large megalithic ancient structures and how closely they represent our own mechanics, even at a microscopic level, and again, mirroring this back to the macroscopic. You see, the cosmos and everything you see out there in the universe, when you look out the starry skies, very much represents your own inner workings. In that way, you have sort of a miniature cosmos inside of you. And this is why many ancient texts refer to this idea that you're made in the image of the divine, that you're made in the image of God. So let's go back to this pineal gland, not the pineal gland, sorry, let's go back to this third eye, because the pineal, we'll get into that, is only one component of this. And so, with that being said, think about the Great Pyramids, right? In the Great Pyramids and many Egyptian symbology, you will see this reference to the third eye. In the case of the Great Pyramids, it is this idea that the king's chamber represents this central chamber in your mind, in your brain, called the third ventricle. The third ventricle is a medically correct term for the space that resides almost in the middle region of your brain, the lower middle region of your brain, and there's three structures within it that are actually identical to what you'll see in the king's chamber. So the first one here is the pineal or the pituitary gland. The pituitary gland sits just behind the bridge of your nose, just behind and sort of lower down between the bridge of your nose. And this part of you is responsible for your self consciousness, your self awareness. It is the seat of your reason when you're, weighing odds and comparing things, and the seat of your will, the will to do things, the will to move forward. And this part of you forms your awareness, your self awareness. Now, the second part of you is what many YouTube videos will refer to as your third eye or the pineal gland. And this is partially true because the pineal gland is a pine cone shaped gland that the ancient Egyptians would actually celebrate. They would they would tie a pine cone to their head to sort of celebrate how magical this gland was and how important it was to their consciousness. You'll see many YouTube videos reference this as the pineal gland. And again, that's partially true because these three structures in the king's chamber of in your brain, in your mind, actually form what we call the third eye. These things work together. And so the pineal gland in a healthy individual is able to actually make connections to information beyond time and space. When I say healthy individual, I mean somebody who is. We'll get to that at the end of the video because I'm going to give you 5 things that'll make you a healthy individual rather than focusing on what a healthy individual is not. But the pineal gland is this connection to the supraconscious mind. Your mind has different levels within it. There's the self-conscious mind, which is who you are, your self-awareness. There's the supraconscious mind, as above, which is your conscious connection to the divine, cosmic consciousness. And then you have your subconscious, which dwells deep within you, below you, the womb of your reality. So the supraconscious mind is incredibly important because this is where sometimes you'll get those intuitive insights, those hits of inspiration, those ideas that maybe kind of sound like they came from you, but deep down did not come from you. Or that intuition that you get about somebody. That didn't come from you, but then you follow it and you're, as crazy as some of those things may seem, right? Think about a moment in your life where you did something that sounded so crazy and then it just worked out so perfectly and you look back and you're like, how did I do that, right? This is your connection to the supraconscious mind, to the divine mind, or what we call the mind of God. Now, the third structure is your optic thalamus. It's a very special structure because we think about eyesight and how it gets to the brain. Well, this is the part of your mind. This is the part of your brain that actually interprets what you're seeing, interprets your sight. And we could call this part of your mind, of your brain, perception. Your ability to perceive things accurately based on your connection to the other two things, based on your connection to the pituitary, your self-awareness, and based on your connection to the pineal, the connection to information beyond time and space. So these three things work together. They're symbolized in the king's chamber, and you'll see many Egyptian symbology. I'm going to try and find some images for you that will show you how closely they map these images, which we thought were so unrelated, to actually the function of the brain, to the function of the mind. All of this is an allegory. It's symbolism, because this is how the ancient people thought. They had very much opened up that right side of their mind, that infinite expansive awareness, and were able to see things symbolically. And we're returning to that time again, but that's for a different video. Now, even if you have a healthy individual who has these three things working in order, there's another component of this that almost never gets talked about, and that is your cerebrospinal fluid. Did you know you make about half a liter of cerebrospinal fluid every day? That's crazy, because with the amount of it that you produce, nobody really ever talks about it. And this is a sort of spinal fluid that's created in your brain within physical structures in your brain. And I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I'm pretty sure that your these structures in the king's chamber of your brain actually create some of this fluid as well. But this fluid's created in the brain, and then it's sent down the spine. It bathes the brain and it bathes the spine, and is almost seen as an intelligent substance itself. The cerebrospinal fluid is so unique, and I remember going on a few calls and seeing this substance. Yes, they were very gory calls, but when you have a head injury or something like that, where fluids are leaking out of you, you'll see blood off, obviously, but you'll also see this strange viscous substance, which is your cerebrospinal fluid. And this spinal fluid is actually an intelligent substance. There's a doctor that I've been reading a lot of his work, Dr. William Sutherland, and I really like the way he wrote, because he was a doctor practicing in the 19th century who's very, very unhappy with the way the medical system was going. Like, he would be rolling over in his grave if he knew the way the medical system works today. But he invented a new type of medicine called osteopathic medicine, which is basically says study of the bones. And he believed your musculoskeletal system, your muscle and bone system of your body, was very much closely tied to your mental health, your conscious health, and other aspects of your health. And so let me read you a quote about what he said about the cerebrospinal fluid. So let's see what Dr. William Sutherland says here. The highest known element that is contained in the human body is cerebrospinal fluid, and that this great river of life must be tapped, and the withering field irrigated at once, of the harvest of health will be forever lost. Another doctor here also says, cerebrospinal fluid is an intermediary in the flow of divine intelligence, infusing the subject with life, form, subject, and order. So think about this fluid that's being produced in your body, half a liter a day, that's bathing your spinal cord, which has its own intelligence, that's bathing your brain, that's being produced in and around this king's chamber in your brain. Knowing this, you'll realize how important this fluid really is to lay this foundation down, to create this connection with the pineal gland, to create this connection with your pituitary, and have a healthy functioning optic thalamus, the king's chamber of your mind. This is really where I think they say the kingdom is within you. When they say the kingdom is within you, I do believe this is what they're referring to. So it's time to open your king's chamber. What are we going to do this? There's 5 things. The first one might be obvious to you, is hydrate. Because this substance requires water to produce. Your body is 60 to 70% water in many people. And if you're dehydrated, like many of us are, like I'm drinking my coffee right now, shout out to the coffee drinkers. But I'll make sure, and this is something I've focused on more recently, is making sure my water intake is top notch, especially when I'm going to the gym, drinking coffee, doing all these things. If you're older in age, you should be drinking even more water. If you're going to the gym, you should be drinking more water. There's certain I think as a society, we all drink less water than we should, and this sort of severs our connection to this part of our human body, this very important mechanism. The second part is gentle movement. Now, this is something I realized when I started doing yoga, because when you do these gentle movements through yoga, you'll get something at the end called the yoga buzz. I don't know, I call it yoga buzz, but it's sort of this blissful, deeply relaxed state. And I do believe part of that is these gentle movements that you do during yoga that allow the cerebrospinal fluid to move through your spine, to move through the structures of your central nervous system. And that's something we need to look into a little bit more, because I do believe the yogis, people who practice this gentle movement, I think there's other ways to other practices as well. Qigong, there's Tai Chi. There's all these gentle sort of practices that have been adopted by almost every race and religion, that they've all developed their own technique. And I do believe it comes down to they realized this flow of energy, which they didn't call it cerebrospinal fluid, but they realized to make it move through your body, you needed this gentle movement. Number 3 is deep breathing. Now, this may come as a surprise to you, but when you actually breathe deeply, you create negative and positive pressure. You create a pressure change within the inside of your body, which would again help you in moving the cerebrospinal fluid. Now, I'll share an experience with you I had recently, because I recently did something called a breathwork ceremony, which is, you guys know Wim Hof? He does that crazy breathing method. Well, that generates a lot of pressure difference inside of your body, which allows the cerebrospinal fluid to probably move very rapidly, because what you'll find in this breathing exercise, when you do breath work over half an hour, 45 minutes, you actually go into almost like a LSD or psychedelic kind of state. Like, I've had intense visions, I've done astral projection, I've left my body, I've done all these things during this breathwork ceremony without taking any drugs, which just speaks to the power of activating this king's chamber in your mind, and to begin to bathe your whole central nervous system in this highly intelligent substance. Now, the last two here are meditation, first of all, because your mind and your body need to become one to activate this third eye, to activate your sacred sight. And this should come as no surprise to you, but if you're thinking negative thoughts, if you're feeling a certain way negatively, if you're very emotionally charged, that's going to also affect your ability to activate this part of you, even though you have the foundation down. And I think this deserves a video on its own. So if you're enjoying what you've heard so far, subscribe to the channel. The last one here is what you're ingesting. We put fluoride in everything. Fluoride has actually been shown, medically, scientifically proven, to calcify all the structures we talked about here today. Your king's chamber will be crusted over with this fluoride substance, and it's not good for you in any way, and the benefits are minimal. I challenge you to do some research yourself if you don't believe me, but I've been fluoride free for almost a decade now, and I don't get cavities. My dentist doesn't know what I'm doing at home, but it's the thing I'm doing is not using what they're giving me at the dentist's office. So with that being said, do these 5 things. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. Until next time, peace.